The bats on our planet, they comprise 1/4 of all mammal species, and there are only more rodents on our planet than there are bats, and they're certainly not related to rodents. The 1,000 species are broken up, has nothing to do with. And they have a very low birth rate, which is the big problem with our little brown bats. And all the bats that are affected by white nose syndrome, they give birth to just 1 pup a year. Sometimes big brown bats can give birth to twins. Sometimes red bats can even have triplets. A red bat is even just a little bit smaller than a big brown, and I can't imagine a mother red bat hauling around with 3 pups. But the birth rate is really, really low with these animals, which makes getting their populations back up a very, very difficult thing to do. They will spend about an hour with their pup when it's first born, learning its scent and its high frequency voice, because just as we all have voices that, you know, people might recognize my voice from the radio, or if all of us were standing behind a board and each of you spoke, your parents and your friends and your relatives could choose you out of all of us speaking, they recognize you by your voice. Bats are identified by their sonar voices as well. They're also identified by their sonar voices, identified species. So you can tell in the sonar of a big brown bat versus a little brown bat versus a long-eared bat, which is cool. Just like you can identify birds by their voices, you can identify bats by their sonar. And a mother bat will carry her pup with her when she hunts at night. The little brown bat, of course, is your subject matter. Just a charming little animal with a behavior like a Jack Russell Terrier. They're really feisty. Even their sonar sounds different from the big brown bats when you hear it on a sonar detector. It's a really fast, rapid-fire sonar, as opposed to the big brown bats. It's kind of clickety, 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 click. This little guy is a wired bat. It's a crazy little bundle of energy, utterly charming, very affectionate, very, very, very intelligent, and it can eat 1,200 mosquitoes in an hour on a summer night. So, you know, all of the bats that are really being hammered by white nose syndrome are primarily the mosquito eaters. The big brown bats are definitely affected by white nose, but not like the Myotis species, the little brown, the northern long-eared, the Indiana bat, which is already federally endangered. These little Myotis bats are very delicate. They're much more delicate, and you can see from the bat that I'm passing around, the little brown that I'm passing around, how tiny that animal is. In hibernation, they hibernate very, very differently than the big brown bat, and that's what has made them so susceptible to this fungus. They require a lot more humidity, so they huddle together a lot more in hibernation, and that is where the problem lies. So again, about a 6.5-inch wingspan. This little animal can live for 30 years. If it lives at all, and I believe that they are completely wiped out from northwestern Connecticut, and I'm very, very doubtful that their numbers are ever going to return. However, there are areas of Connecticut, especially out the eastern portion of the state, where they're still finding little colonies of little brown bats. It's a cold-loving fungus. Everybody was saying, geez, too bad for you guys in the Northeast. We're not going to get this because we live in warm places, and look how far south it's spread. It just continues to spread. And this is what it looked like at the onset. You know, it was so crazy that we kept on saying in Connecticut, yeah, we don't have it, we don't have it, when we were so vulnerable from the very beginning, because here we are up in the northwest corner, and there's New York State and Massachusetts here. It starts in New York State, not too far from us, and our bats are crisscrossing the borders all the time, because New York is just peppered with caves. And so, and so it started. I remember so many things that happened where I was handling white nose syndrome bats, and yet the state was saying, no, we don't have it, and we were just kind of waiting for it to pop up, but it was already clearly here. These are all bodies of little brown bats. Are you familiar with Mine Hill in Roxbury? Mine Hill was our largest hibernaculum for little brown bats. 4,000 little brown bats lived in Mine Hill. All of them are dead today. So, you know, again, and that's very close to home, very, very close. So this is what it looked like, and the biologists were just scratching their heads. And I'm sure you guys have seen plenty of pictures of this and how it affects the little brown bats. So the problem with little brown bats, as I said before, is that they're very delicate. They're very small. They require much more humidity and warmth in hibernation, so they huddle together. You know, when you buy a box of raspberries, you love them, huh? Yeah, you go to the market and you buy a box of raspberries that's $3.99 a pint and a half pint, and you gotta have those raspberries. I'm craving them so badly, and you're looking in that half pint box to make sure one isn't moldy, because you know that the next morning, if there's one moldy berry in there, that's going to spread. This is exactly the same way it happens with white nose syndrome. These little guys are nestled together in this little carpet of bat bodies, and if one has it, it's going to go right across the colony. And that's what's made these animals so susceptible. The big brown bat is a much hardier animal, but biologists believe that there is a lot of pup mortality in colonies now because of something that's happening to the mother bats. I'm not a scientist, but I have my own idea of what is happening to mother big brown bats that's causing their pups to die. Our green barn at White Memorial had 310 big brown bats living in it in 2010, and today we have about 198. So those bats are just not moving to other places. Bats are territorial. They come back to the same place year after year after year. They go to hibernate at the same place and they come back to their home ground year after year after year. So there is absolutely something going on with big brown bat populations, and it absolutely is linked to white nose syndrome. The biologists can't figure that out yet. The black arrow is pointing to healthy tissue, the white arrow is pointing to tissue that's decaying, and if you were to touch the end of that wingtip, it would crumple off in your hand like paper. It's crazy. So what can bats do for me? Everything. There isn't an animal on this planet that affects human life day to day in a more powerful and more significant way than a bat. Whether they're eating insects, #1 controller of night-flying insects worldwide, or they're putting food on your table. Bananas, cashews, dates, figs, mangoes. If your folks like a margarita with their din-din when you go out for Mexican food, it is because of the bat that you have tequila. There is only one species of bat responsible for pollinating the agave plant, and tequila comes from that. So bats are pollinators and seed dispersers, primarily insect eaters, and they give and give